Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. So, I wanted to make a shorter, more universal video in preparation for the patch, as I thought a lot of things would be changing. Turns out they already have, and a fair few of the BRs of vehicles I've already covered have been changed, so huzzah. But yes, after I cover every vehicle for Italy, I am planning to make an addendum at the end, talk about all the changes, mistakes I made, or just things I've changed my mind on, so I will be talking about all the changes in due time. For now though, I wanted to make a quick video on something I know a lot of people are quite passionate about, and that is spawn camping in ground forces. So, the dumbed down, bare bones definition of spawn camping is when an enemy tank is sitting in or around the opposing spawn point and knocking out the vehicle spawning in, usually without giving them a chance to fight back. But there are two different sides to spawn camping really. The former and more unsportsmanlike side is when a player makes it his or her prime goal to flank around the enemy spawn, hide somewhere and shoot the vehicles leaving without really giving them a chance to fight back or notice them. The latter side, usually referred to as spawn pushing, is a term usually used by players quite correctly to shut down accusations of spawn camping. Usually by a player who spawned in at the end of the match, finding the rest of the other team in their spawn, giving them absolutely no chance of getting out. Spawn camping, they hark from the battle screen before respawning again, for some reason. Now, I don't think the latter side is too much of a problem, only for the reason that it's not the player's fault this happens, it's down to the maps. Looking at you, Advance the Rhine. Realistically, if one team has won and the other team only has planes left or a few SPA in the spawn, where else is the winning team expected to go? The only place where their time can really be made useful is by heading to the spawn and knocking out any of the vehicles that respawn there. You can't really expect players generally not to do this if the match is clearly won. What benefit is there to the winning team to sit back and wait for the few remaining tanks to come to them? I can appreciate also, however, how frustrating it can be to be in the losing situation in this scenario. We have quite literally all been there. Actually, on Advance the Rhine, an example of this, I've gone out of my way to drive away from the spawn with my back to it on the left side of the map, only to get shot in the engine and get taken out. So, by trying to do a nice thing and not, I guess, spawn camp, I'm being punished for it. To set the foundation here, the real villain to spawn camping is the map itself. So, the purpose of this video is to talk through some ideas about the collective issue of spawn camping and how to dissuade players from doing it. And I say dissuade because, as much as we would like, in a game like this it just isn't realistically possible to outright stop it. It will always happen in some capacity, and the best we can really do is just give players fair deterrence from actually going in and doing it. So, first I want to go through some ideas that I just don't think work, be it how unrealistic they are to implement or just how some of them don't work. The first thing I can't see happening is anything relating to the maps themselves, as there's no pre-packaged fix that would work on all of them. People like the idea of a spawn zone that's technically outside of the map where tanks drive out, or a section of the map that's completely impossible to shoot into. For the latter, it wouldn't really work, as you'll get players spiting the enemy team just camping in their own spawn and never really driving out if they're the last one alive. You could say, oh well, just bomb them, but, you know, what if they're in 3 SPA? This wouldn't work because it allows for scenarios where players themselves can do nothing and choose to draw the match out for the side that won, and that isn't really fun for anybody. The other issue with the spawn outside the map and the idea of a closed-off spawn is that if neither side can see each other, the players camping the spawn will always get the first shot off, as it is the initiative of the defending players to leave their spawn. The attacking players don't need to do anything. This will undoubtedly happen with a spawn zone outside of the map or one that functions that way, whether it's a hill to drive over to get into the map or a corner to turn around. A spawn camper will always deal the first hit, which is actually worse than what we have currently. Another idea that works in theory would be something along the lines of an automated weaponry system that protects the spawns. So something like AT guns, automatic artillery fire, or pillboxes around the spawn areas, maybe firing high caliber HE rounds to track and blow the barrels off incoming tanks. It does create a few more problems though. Would they be indestructible? If they were, it would just allow for players to easily hide in their spawn from the safety of the guns. If they were destructible, it probably wouldn't take very long to knock them out. Lobbing a round into a pillbox at close range really isn't too hard. And in practice, I imagine maybe the guns will disable 1 or 2 tanks coming up to the spawn before they're taken out, which doesn't really fix the problem, it just draws it out, I guess. Plus, again, not all maps would allow for them to be added realistically. It's a nice idea, and I actually do quite like it. The guns would probably be enough to knock out a stray spawn killer, and it would inhibit but not make it impossible for spawn pushers to get to the spawn, to slow them down, which I guess is a good thing. But I just can't really see Gaijin doing this, as I guess it is hard to balance in relation to how the current maps work. So I like the idea, but it would take a fair bit of work and a lot of testing, and I think realistically we're looking at a fix that can be easily implemented, doesn't require much adjustment and heavy testing, and would tick all of these boxes. An ideal solution to spawn camping needs to 1. Be fair to the winning team, 2. Be fair to the losing team, and 3. Punish the players out to do it deliberately. The main focus on this is fairness. The players spawn pushing because they've won the match shouldn't be punished for doing it, as it's just how most of the maps play out. On the flip side, the players being spawn camped need some kind of help or advantage. In the grand scheme of things, it's kinda to cater to the players losing than the players winning. Like in Mario Kart when you get stuck with one of the rubbish green shells that are in the lead. So, first, let's talk about some ways to punish or disincentivize players from deliberately spawn camping. Currently, the only detriment to a player doing this is that if they're close enough to the spawn, they'll get constantly pinged on the map, so everyone on the other team will know exactly where they are. This usually isn't enough though, at least not a complete deterrent. A big part of this is because not all maps have a good spawn exclusion zone, meaning a player can avoid it and still shoot into the spawn without being pinged on the map. I think the most simple solution to this is to ping a player on the map, not constantly but briefly, when they shoot and hit a tank in the spawn, and really draw attention to it on the minimap, maybe even have the announcer say something like, "We're taking fire in the spawn," while the enemy marker is flashing on the map so no one misses it. This also works in not being too much of a punishment to players spawn pushing at the end of the game, as they're all pretty much in the spawn exclusion zone and getting pinged on the map anyway. There is a drawback to this though, in that some maps allow for a player to just sit in their spawn and engage without leaving it. Not all of them granted, but some. This could hypothetically be a slight exploitation, but I still think it would be a decent compromise still. A small but useful addition as well I think would be to redo the spawn graphics. Right now it's just flags, and this shows everyone where the spawns are exactly, which doesn't really help. I think simply they should completely remove the flags and replace the spawn area with like an orange striped hazard zone. Maybe sprinkle a few no entry signs around too for good measure. This next bit will sound a bit pretentious, but at least subconsciously I think it will deter players from straying too close. A flag inherently usually signals an endpoint like a race, it's somewhere to head to, which shouldn't really be the aim. A player shouldn't be aiming to finish up at the spawn, they should be aiming to click on tanks and cap zones. Flags I guess are just inviting, whereas a commonly depicted warning zone will probably put a few players off, I'd wager. Just so it was clear that that area was the enemy spawn though, maybe put a few red arrows through the area just so no one gets confused. Another thing that could have a benefit here is the consideration of limiting the rewards you get for killing a tank in the spawn. They could limit lions or RP, but I think something would work better, and that would be to not make it count as a kill. This might seem silly, and if Gaijin were to limit a reward from spawn killing, the last thing would likely be to make the kill not count. But from players that I've seen that spawn camp deliberately, a fair few of them only really seem that interested in padding their stats a lot, so limiting RP and lions wouldn't really be enough for players intent on doing it. If a kill in the spawn zone didn't count on a player's stat cards, they had nothing to show for it and got pointed out on the map for doing it, I really think it would stop a lot of players from trying that and making it their aim. I think this is also the best option because of the addition of things like helicopters, they can see right into the spawns. And if uncountered, they can leather the spawn with AGMs if they like, and if they knew they were getting no benefit to killing tanks in the spawn, I'd wager they'd probably wait until they left at least. Again though, a problem with this is that if there's an SPA or maybe who knows down the line a SAM vehicle in the spawn shooting them down, it's not a good feedback loop to get no rewards for doing your job, and this is ultimately why I think killing a vehicle in the spawn just shouldn't give a kill. Especially because at the high tiers, shots cost a lot of money and you can't make a player lose money for doing what they're supposed to, click on tanks. This is especially relevant to spawn pushing. These players shouldn't be punished for taking the match and being forced to the spawn by the map, and losing money for clearing up the last few tanks. I think this is probably universally the best option. I do think though this idea might annoy some people, as I can imagine players seeing the endgame spawn pushing and getting a few kills and the helpless AA is some kind of reward for winning the match. I can appreciate that mindset, but I do think the compromise would be worth it in this sense. I mean, I personally wouldn't set outside of the enemy spawn on a one match if I knew I wouldn't get a kill out of it. Though not everyone is going to have the same mindset as me, but of course if some players did, it would likely allow for the players getting spawn camped and not having the best time to get out of their spawn and have a chance at least, or at least the illusion of a chance, which is honestly the most important thing here. Again, it's a massive distance between games, but a game that actually does this really well is Mario Kart. A player in the last place will usually get one of the bigger bonuses from the item boxes. This will usually boost them a few places, but not necessarily going to easily get them back to the front. It's not a surefire way to win. It's just a helping hand up rather than a kick back down. And that mentality is probably the most important thing to fix this wider problem. Because spawn camping can't be removed, the players experiencing it need reasonable help by the game to deal with it. There's sadly not many things that could be added to the losing side while also being fair to the team that's won the match though. The only thing that could really sensibly be added and would be simple to add would probably be something like this. One thing I've noticed is that not all players pay attention to the minimap and will spawn in with an enemy in the spawn or by the spawn and just not notice. One thing I think that would be really beneficial here is to give a big warning on the respawn screen pointing out that there is an enemy in the respawn zone. Maybe when you click the respawn button the announcer says something like, "Enemy in the respawn zone, be careful," and the ping on the map flashes so that the player respawning is well equipped to deal with it. With the spawn immunity and knowing exactly where the enemy is, they'll likely have a good chance. It's not much, but it is realistically not too hard to implement and would probably help the player base out a fair bit. Of course, for this to work correctly, the spawn exclusion zones would have to be reworked, which they are actually in need of anyway. I could go into more detail on other possible ideas, but I think I've already covered the most realistic possible additions. I was going to go into a segment here about creating a secondary spawn area when the first one has enemies around it, so each map would have a backup spawn I guess, but I'd say this is very unlikely to happen and not even possible on certain maps. And on top of this, it would drag out the matches even more, which I know is something that Gaijin is very, very much against. Anyway, I think these ideas I've covered would tick all the boxes, with fair help to the side getting camped, no unreasonable punishments to the team that's ended up spawn pushing, and deterrence for players out to spawn camp from the start. These ideas obviously aren't perfect, but a perfect fix to spawn camping in the game doesn't exist. There's no ultimate fix-all to the system, and the best it can really get is a fair compromise between the three main aspects. Realistically though, I don't think most of these ideas could be implemented unless the spawn zones on some maps were tweaked. Anyway, whatever side of the spawn you find yourself on, I hope you found these ideas somewhat interesting. So, there we are guys, hope you enjoyed the video. This was actually inspired by a string of about 5 or 6 games I had the other day while trying to spade Italy, of just players all over the place complaining about spawn camping and spawn killing, and most of the instances weren't really fair, but it just kind of made me think, well, you know, everyone is probably quite passionate about this and has a lot of ideas themselves, and I might as well, you know, make one of my own, like make a video. And because, you know, patch is coming around the corner, lots of things are going to change, I thought I might as well just do something like this instead. There will hopefully be another video if I can get my voice to work. It's been struggling a bit today, as you probably can hear throughout the video, but if it stops being annoying, I will hopefully get another video out before the update, hopefully. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Do check out the shop as well, there's some new stuff on there that I hope you'll all enjoy. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye. I'm off to play some Mario Kart.